It's one of those days when you feel like you're just going to, well, relax into working on the allotment. That's how I feel today. And I've got some of this membrane arriving today. So I'm thinking I could get along and spread some of what I've got here, get down to this point. I'm going to lift this little bit here, or these bits of sort of sections of membrane, and drop it into this area so that I can also spread over here. And that will mean that the paths are well underway, and this bit I can put the new membrane onto, which will be nice and clean and clear for me to add more chippings on top of. When I get to lifting this, I think I'm gonna just sort this out a bit. I've got a few ridges and bumps there. And then if I get into here with all the chippings on top, which will be great, I can possibly start to either move the potato pots or the garlic. And this morning I saw a cat sat on top of the garlic. So it is sort of pushing me forward to try and resolve that. And I also want to find a bit more of a permanent home for the hose, because I keep tripping over it. I don't really want to put it around the back of the polytunnel yet, because there's chippings heading that way in the not too distant future. So I don't know, I might try and coil it. We'll see how we get on. The other things that are pressing are the purple sprouting broccoli. Some of them have had it, so I quite like to take that one out. The kale is well past its best. Most of the leaves now have got brown across virtually the whole leaf, so I'm thinking they need to come out pretty soon. So I've got some choices really as to what I do. I've not heard about any more deliveries of manure. That'll probably be next week. But I'm feeling like I'm getting on top of it now. I'm feeling like spring's around the corner and I'm nearly complete on the downsizing. I do want to get a few weeds up out of here. I've said that before, but I'm thinking that given I'm not going to be cutting a lot of grass in the near future, I might end up putting wood chip on top of those raspberry beds just to keep the weeds from getting prolific. And then in the area that I'm pulling out of, well, let me show you what's left. Ooh, on my way, two things occurred to me. One, Mrs. K's been having a really good go at the flower bed. She's taken out all the dead leaves and stems and exposed a lot of the new plant growth, which is fantastic. She's asked me to remove these wigwams because she's not going to put sweet peas in there this year, so I ought to do that today really, because she wants to get in there and take the remaining weed out. And well, that will make this bed look very much more manicured and ready for the oncoming season. The other thing that I want to show you is amazing. It's, well, this pond had tadpoles in it last year, and this year exactly the same. There is all the frog spawn. There is oodles of it, and it just shows how this pond has matured. I did see some movement down below. In fact, I can see two young newts down at the bottom of the pond now. You probably can't see them because of reflections, but yeah, that pond is absolutely teeming with life. And of course I'm giving this up, but I don't anticipate anybody is going to be changing this configuration in the near future. I know the gentleman who's on the old squash bed really well. I can't think that he would want to change that. And well, we don't know who's going to take over this space in front of the shed. I of course have got to get my purple sprouting broccoli out there pretty quickly. I think what I'm going to be doing is waiting a few weeks, get to, well, mid-March, and then I'll crop any purple sprouting broccoli that's looking good, and remove all the stakes and the old plants. This one, which was much more low growing, look how much better it is than these ones that stood up and faced all that freezing cold weather we had for, well, I think it was probably a week to 10 days. So they have definitely taken a hit here, but it does look like we're going to get some sort of crop. So the shed's pretty much empty, just my long-handled tools and some brackets and things to come out of there. And of course, as everyone has reminded me, my barn star on the top. I'll take the baskets down probably. Otherwise, that's pretty much out of there. I am thinking I might take this gate, given that I made it, and probably leave this section there. Round here now, everything's out. Nothing here is mine. All of this has been removed. I've got this little collection of things. And this morning I thought, well, that rhubarb tub that I've put in place is quite successful, I think. So I might cut this bin that's really not very good. It doesn't stand up, and just make another sort of rhubarb funnel for it. And the same goes for this other green contraption that rusted through, and I kept the plastic compost rotavator thing it was, and I think I could probably make that into another two. So it wouldn't hurt to have my rhubarb funneled in that way with all those. So that might be bring the saw over a day and get those organized. And we're pretty well organized down here. These bits and bobs not going to move until I need to move them, which will be when I eventually get organized with a shed. Right, so let's have a look at this membrane. I think I'm going to lift this first, get this bit organized, and then get to the point where I work out which of the piles of wood chip I'm going to use. Probably all those that are on the ground surface already, and then perhaps tuck into one bag and see how we get on. I think I've got this area pretty well covered now. It is a bit of a patchwork job, but of course when the wood chip is on top of it, it makes no difference at all, especially if you've got a reasonable thickness. I've put this spare bit of green corrugated iron along the back just to act as a bit of a windbreak, and the chippings will go into that groove and not fall over into the bank. And I'm not going to worry about securing this at the moment because a few of those pots along here and that won't be going anywhere. So next step, drag a bit of that wood chip down and I'll get to this edge and stop. But I have been looking forward to this. See how I get on. Well, that went well. I'll spread that down here. There's still quite a lot more to go in. A couple of barrow loads, I would imagine. And this is really thick. I guess it's 2 to 3 inches. Some places it's 4. So there's just oodles of it. And if I have to scrape some of it off, that won't be a problem. So I've leveled this path out. There was a real slope on this path, and of course it's taking it away, which is marvelous. And I've just pulled it down these very small paths to start with. And that is incredible how far that's gone. And I've not even started on the bags or that mound over there. So I think what I'm going to do is just spread this out, get this path done, and then take a look at that area I've lifted the membrane. It needs a leveling a bit. Right, so I've decided for the time being I'm going to leave these wooden edges in on the left just to give the path some definition. We'll see in good time whether they come out, but at the moment I'm comfortable with it. So what I'm trying to do here is get a little bit of a level. I've got some real divots in the middle and of course the channel down the outside. So I'm just going to try and even things out so that we don't end up with a super bumpy path. Clearly the wood chip will fill in the gaps, but the flatter I make it, the less of the volume of chippings I'm going to need to fill those divots. Right, just going to take off a sliver, I think, off the top and feed it into the edge and into those divots, and then that should be ready for covering when the new membrane comes. And then I'll do a bit more of the exciting stuff and fill some of the other parts. Well, who would have thought we'd be in t-shirts now? What is it? Latter end of February. And well, certainly once you start doing a few things, it gets you warm pretty quick. Okay, that's nice and flat now, really pleased with that. And that just will await a bit more membrane. In the meantime, I think I'm going to fill this path down to that point, come across the two smaller paths and go down the middle, and I'll take all that out of the really big bag, which will leave me 3 big bags left. It's certainly going a long way, I'm pleased to say. And of course I've got a bit to get down there, so I'll get the bag down to a fairly low level, and then I think I'll drag the bag over there and empty it. Right, onward. Oh my goodness, what a transformation. And that's a good 3 or 4 inches deep. I've put quite a lot here because it's quite a high traffic flow area. I need to fill that little corner there and get down these couple of small paths. And I'm still probably only halfway through this first of 4 bags. So I think a bit more out of there and probably get this whole area sorted. Should leave just about the right amount to drag down to the bottom there. Let's see how I get on. Well, there's a few things I've learned as I've been doing this, and I think they're worth sharing. Number one is this wide, long-handled shovel has been absolutely fantastic for moving wood chip. I would imagine with a normal spade it would be a considerably harder problem. And the other thing that I've learned, which I think has been very timely, I was thinking of leaving this wood chip in these bags for a bit longer, and I thought, no, I'll get on with it today. And I'm glad I did, because I don't know whether it picked up on the video, but as I dug into the middle of these, the steam was really rising, and the temperature in the middle of these bags is very hot indeed. And of course, this is much like a compost heap starting to decompose, and I really don't want that to happen. So I'm grateful that I got underway really, and I need to think carefully about the bags that might be left when I've done pretty much everything I can just here. So I think I'm going to be trying to spread this out as quickly as possible. I'm thinking about the gravel path because the gravel is diminishing over time as I've been moving up and down it. And I'm thinking that wood chip on top of the gravel, which is on membrane, won't be a problem at all. And of course, putting the wood chip on the raspberries might be where that last bag is heading. And that way, at least it gets on the ground and doesn't start to compost. And obviously, if it composts, it diminishes quite quickly. Right, I'm down the end now, trying to get that sorted out. Well, although it's a beautiful day, I think I'm going to stop there because, well, I just need to make sure I put the rest of the chippings in the right places, and I want to get this membrane. That roll should arrive today, and that will mean that I can travel all the way down there. I think I'm going to go down to the red currant bush in hindsight and have a 1 meter wide strip just go down there and have it chipped out, and then that'll leave me the grass area underneath the red currants to sort of think about. And well, I'm really pushing down into this area now. I'll want to get all those pots over into their final location, and then I'll put chip into the 2 paths, and then I feel comfortable with everything having been down here and this bit leading up to the water tanks, and that'll give me a real good fix on whether I do this path. I think I probably will end up doing that, and I can take stock then. I've put a little bit of a reserve in there because it's a good location to have it, so if I get any bare patches appear or I've misjudged the height of it anywhere, I can bring some out. But it has transformed it. It actually makes it a real pleasure to walk on as well. Very even and a little bit bouncy, certainly not hard on the legs. I'm really going to enjoy working on here through the spring months. Right, well, I think that's it for today, and I'll bring you back up to speed when I get out here again with more membrane. Good times. Well, it's a bit more overcast today, but the membrane's arrived, so good news. Means I can get this chipping job finished, at least moved on quite a lot. So I'm planning to fill this space just below my feet here, finish running down there, and I'm gonna probably go most of the way down this side, and the idea being then that pretty much all the chipping's done. I may get to move these potato pots today. We'll see how I get on with this, and then I could just put 2 strips of wood chippings in those paths. So this is 1 metre by 50 metres of woven ground cover membrane. It's the heavy duty sort of level of stuff, which is about 100 grams per square metre. That's how they measure it. So it's what I've used before, and it's pretty long lasting, to be fair, and I bought enough to enable me to overcome that edge on the top of the fruit garden, which is starting to get an awful lot of weeds growing up through it. So my plan would be to lift that, remove the weeds, relay it, and then put a fresh strip along the edge, and that would be a belts and braces type of approach to overcoming the weed growth on the edge of the fruit garden. But that's for another day. We'll get this undone, and then I'm hoping, yep, we're about 1 metre there, so it should go in without any problem at all, and we'll then move the chips. So with this membrane, I'm just going to tuck it under this one so that I get, well, I don't get the chance of a flap. The gravity is going to send the chipping underneath it and lift it. This way the gravity will be on top of this one, which is on top of this one, and that will keep it in place, and that will also help for any water that runs down here. I'm going to take that right up to the edge. It's not going to be the perfect width, this. Bring that one over the top, and then just put some chips on there for a minute, and then I hopefully can just roll this one down and it'll go to the bottom. And I'm going to apply the same sort of logic here. I'm going to just cut this about midway so that the membrane that I bring down this way will in fact anchor it in place. There we go. Right, I'll get some scissors and then run the rest of these. I think what I'm going to do is cut here, just along there, because everything is reasonably flush. But this path is just a bit wider than the membrane, so if I cut, I can shunt it up to the edge, and then I'll have another piece, I think, layering into where the shed's going to be, and that will make sure that this strip here is covered rather than always be a problem. So I've been using this, well, culinary burner, because it is just the best way to make a good cut in this sort of membrane. As you're cutting it, it's sealing the edge, which is very desirable given that they just fray, and then doing it that way, they don't fray at all. Okay, so that's to that point, and I'll just shufty this over now, bring it back to overlap a bit, probably tuck that under like I've done with everything else. There we go. I'll sort out that little bit of corner in a minute, and now I can get right up to the edge of the beds. There we go. And then I can layer in another piece that flows over that edge. Okay. Next. I stressed earlier in the video why I needed to get on with this. Just take a look what happens when you take the middle out. It is absolutely steaming in here and starting to decompose in reality, and if I can get it down on the ground, keep it cool rather than keep it in this mound or bag, then I can stop it decomposing and the life of it will be that much longer. But yeah, if you left it like this for too long, I would imagine you'd have compost, or certainly well on the way to compost, relatively quickly. I can feel the heat through my gloves. It is really hot. Right, I'll get on. There we are. I have laid it on pretty thick, as they say, but I figure I've got enough, so it's best to do it that way in one go. So it's pretty much complete down on this end now, and everything down there is work in progress for when the shed comes, as you know. I've got this little reserve here for just filling out some holes, and not today but soon I think I'm just going to tidy up this gravel path, get rid of all the grass at the end, sort out these steps, and then use that last bag before it starts to decompose. And I am advised by the guy who dropped it that he's likely to drop another load at some point in the future, so there's definitely not going to be a shortage. But it's transformed how the plots looked. I haven't done those paths, they can wait until I do that last bag as well, I think. What did occur to me is that a lot of people have asked me over the years why I haven't had a hotbed in the polytunnel, and I've always said I tried a hotbed. I tried it with the manure that I get, but I found that I had nothing but swarms of flies in the polytunnel for weeks and weeks and weeks. It was a real pain. But given the heat that you get off of this, I think this is probably the answer to a really good hotbed inside your greenhouse or your polytunnel. And unless anybody knows any better, I would say that's going to be free of any problems and would decompose eventually, could go onto your beds in your polytunnel. But for certainly a whole season, it would generate some significant warmth. Well, that's me done for today. I wanted to do a lot more, but it's pretty tiring moving that stuff. And well, it's best to be fit as a fiddle when you come to doing the jobs on the allotment. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, why not like and subscribe and give me the thumbs up. Good times.